Thank you. I forgot that I had my microphone muted. But how's it going, guys? Good to see you all. But anyways, today we are going to be finally finishing up multiplayer. Good to see you, Flaming Knight and Voxel Riffs. Miri4F, nice to see all you guys, and Tree. But yeah, basically this last week, I've spent a lot of time cleaning up some bad code, fixing bugs, all that type of stuff. And then I've also spent some time cleaning up the multi-threading and making it so that I can run sort of like big groups of tasks in parallel that don't need to wait, and then sort of wait on a barrier, which is what they call something when you're waiting for something to finish. And then you basically resume. So we can actually start with that and just sort of see what that looks like. Basically, if I go ahead and I'll turn on optic release mode, which basically means I can use this thing called optic, which gives us a way to profile stuff. And I did do a refactor, sort of. Not like a... I mean, I guess I did. For the multi-threading, I did a refactor, but it was pretty constrained in that specific portion of the code because I kept it all sort of local to just multi-threading stuff. So basically, I've got this thing called a global thread pool now, which means that like anybody can submit arbitrary tasks, and then those tasks will get run with a priority. I think it's like, let me see. So if we go to globalthreadpool.h, we can see, nope, that's not globalthreadpool.h. I don't know how I got application.h from that, but okay. Yeah, so you can see you can set it with a high, medium, low, or no priority. And if it has none, that's just like basically the lowest priority. It'll just get run whenever. But yeah, and then basically what ends up happening is anything that gets submitted to this thread pool will run, and then we call the function you provided us with, which basically just takes in some arbitrary data, size of that data, and then when it finishes, we call like a callback if you have that assigned. So basically I can notify you of when that finishes, and you can sort of do extra stuff. Yep. And how's it going, CGO Clan? Clone is going good. We are going to take a look at the multi-threading, which I've basically refactored. So now I'm running it in optic release mode, which basically just turns on these optic debugging events. The reason I have a specific build for that is because I don't know if this actually, ruins performance in the end. So basically I want to be able to just compile without any of these things in there. So that's why I've got that. And CGO Clan says, thanks to your suggestion, you now know a little bit more about C++. Just enough to start learning OpenGL. Okay, cool. Yeah, it's definitely worth your time to like learn C++ in a pretty good way before you actually start, trying to do more advanced things like OpenGL. I tried learning OpenGL before I really knew C++ well too, and it was a disaster. So I went back to Java, and then that's sort of when I started this channel and everything too, after I got a little bit more comfortable with that. But yeah. Anyways, though, so we've got this running. If we go ahead and go into here, we can just hit the start button over here. It's going to start capturing frames. We'll load our world so that we can sort of see these tasks that run in parallel. This gets loaded in, and then if I go back here and stop, this is going to show us sort of a broad overview of what happened. So I'm going to zoom out here, and you can see we've got global threads. So these are 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I basically just allocate as many as your computer has. And then we've got this thing chunk thread worker, which is yet another thread. So basically I was able to separate, parallel groups of tasks from things that happen synchronously in the chunk by specifically having a thread dedicated for chunk stuff. And then I can launch multi-threaded parallel stuff in a big group. So you'll see that what's happening here is this is the generate terrain command. And basically we launch these in 7 threads. They all run. And then we wait on the chunk thread worker. So this guy is just waiting for all of these to finish. And then once the last one finishes, which you can see it's lined up just with that. And there's actually another thread or another command in there. That's generate decorations, which does trees and stuff. Basically, it waits, finishes all that, and then we calculate lighting, which is a synchronous operation. This is doing it for all chunks. These are like individual chunks. But we have to do this at once. And then once that finishes, we go ahead and we launch the tessellate vertices in parallel as well, which are also something that we can trivially parallelize. So this took forever. You have no idea. It was a lot harder than you would think just to get stupid barriers to work. I didn't know what they were called at the time, but now if you're ever in need of it and you are using C++20, they have something easy. I'm not using this because I'm not using C++20, but basically you can use something called a barrier. And what it essentially is it's basically a counter, because this is how I was implementing it myself. I was like, oh, I'll just implement a counter, and that should sort of work for me telling when to start a new task and stuff. And I was like, there's got to be a smarter solution than that. And I found barrier. And when I looked it up on Stack Overflow, everyone was like, yeah, basically all a barrier is it's a counter. And I was like, oh, okay, so no need to upgrade to C++20 yet because it's unnecessary. But basically what happens is inside of the chunk thread worker, and let's actually stop the game. Inside the chunk thread worker, we'll take a look in a minute. What we do is we basically say when we are pushing operations, if they are not synchronous, so if they're asynchronous, we basically push them as a command that's having work done, right? Because if it's not synchronous, we drop into here and we increment this thing called barrier sync point, which is just a number. So basically, it keeps incrementing this number over and over and over again, right, for each command. And then I set a callback for each of the synchronous commands, which is this free chunk command, which basically goes and drops into this function. And if we look at this function, what this does is it says, okay, let's increment the sync counter, which is like a separate counter. And so once that counter gets past the original counter, we basically know we finished as many commands as we've submitted. And so when we hit a command that needs to be done synchronously, and this stuff is all just, I hate multi-threading, but I'm glad it's working. So when we hit something that needs to be done synchronously, what we do is we set up this conditional variable, which basically means in C++ we can wait there without like stalling the CPU thread, like raising it to 100% with a while true loop or something. It basically uses like the operating system's underlying sleep. And then what we do is we basically say wait until we either like unless they're closing the application, or wait until the barrier sync counter is greater than the sync point, which basically means we finished all those commands. And then if we have, then we reset them so that the next time we go through another asynchronous set of commands and synchronous, we can reset that barrier. So it's interesting stuff. At the essence, what it is it's just saying like barrier sync counter is 0 once we start, and so is sync point. And then every time we add a command that's going to be run multi-parallel, right? So like several of those, it increments this. So that would go like 2, 3, 4, 5, till it gets like 400 or something. And then every time one of those finishes, this goes up. So it would just be like going up. And then once this reaches 400, we know that we've finished all of the commands that needed to be run at the same time. And we reset them here, and we run the next command, which is Woods waiting. So yeah. But yeah, SE Woods finishing multiplayer already. Yes, hopefully. We will see if we actually finish or not. But I've got a pretty good plan for what we're going to do. And good to see you, SE Woods. Okay, and I'm glad you guys like this. So Optic is really nice too if you ever want to use it. I saw Cherno use it, and that's why I found out about it. And it is super awesome. Like, great to be able to do stuff like this. Captain Metten. I want to learn C++, only know giving variables and C out. Can you give me a documentation? So best way to learn C++, probably Cherno's video, his video series. He's got like a learning C++ series or whatever, and it's pretty in-depth and good. So depending on what you know, it can be a little bit tedious because it's like he goes over for loops and if statements and stuff. And if you already know how to program, it's kind of like, well, I don't need to know that stuff. I already know how to do that. But it is good. There's a lot of idiosyncrasies in C++, and that's why I would strongly suggest you use a subset of the language and not try to learn everything there is, because it's just a mess. But yeah, a flaming good night. Is it not always a good idea to stay up to date with C++? Yeah, in Voxros, you do have to practice a lot. It's true. And so kind of going into that flaming night, same thing. There's so much cruft that C++ has added as a language. There are some good things that they've added that I like, but there's so many garbage stuff that they've added that I'm just like, why is this even in the language? It just complicates things, and it makes things way more complicated than it needs to be. Whereas if you, like Voxworks is saying here, if you learn C first and you basically learn how to use things on the base level, a lot of the stuff that C++ has added are just unnecessary, like move semantics, for example. If you learn C, when you move stuff, you use a command called mem_move, okay? Like that. Basically what this takes is a pointer for a destination. So like say you were moving some memory, right? Basically you had some variable int star my int array, and this contains a lot of data, right? Like a big array, so 1,000 integers in there. And you have this integer my other array. And basically what you want to do is you want to move this data into here. You're not copying it, because copying is a little bit different, but you're also, you don't need it to stay in this one. That's basically the difference, right? With a move, you're saying, okay, I'm basically just going to get rid of everything in here, so I don't care what's in here afterwards. Just make sure it gets into here. And so then what you can do is you can do something like move into my other int array, my int array, and then you do like size of int times 1,000 or something, right? That's all you do. And basically what you're doing is you're saying move my stuff into from here to here. And it's pretty simple to understand that, right? Whereas C++ adds in all this extra stuff, R values, L values, blah, 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 blah. And the reason they have to do that is because of the way C++ works with its classes and its object-oriented programming, which just complicates the heck out of things. And as long as you're using plain old data and more of a C style, you can still do stuff like this. You should probably use like standard move, which is basically the same thing, just slightly different. But yeah. Anyways, that's my tangent for the day. We're going to work on multiplayer pretty soon. Also, yeah, happy Merry Christmas, everybody. Yep. And let's see. Yeah, knowing low-level memory stuff is 100% necessary. Last tangent too, because I saw this in the Discord and I was just like, so there was that video, 31 newbie C++ habits, and I agree with a lot of them, but I don't agree with them. It's just, yeah, like for instance, some of the things he did was like stood range for like stuff like that. Not that, maybe like find if. Yeah, he used something like this instead of just doing like a for loop. And yeah, sure, it's less lines of code and stuff, but don't use those types of things. Like these things are great. Accumulate, all that type of stuff, right? They're pretty awesome. You can just sort of say, hey, take this function and just add all that stuff up, and it just works. But debugging that type of stuff is impossible, right? Because if you're doing something like stood find if, it takes in the first, the last, and the predicate. If your predicate is lambda, you can't really jump into that code very easily. All sorts of problems until they get C++ functional style programming, which is what that is. Until they get that up to par with the debugging capabilities of Visual Studio and everything, and they get that working, and then they also get it the performance where it's like zero overhead. I would just advise against using stuff like that because it's just pointless. It obfuscates your code for people who aren't familiar with that style for no reason. And then it also just, it can decrease performance if you don't know what it's actually happening there, which is another thing. It obfuscates what's actually happening on the hardware, which is the whole reason you use C++ is that you can be close to the hardware. So yeah. Okay, another tangent, but I promise I'm done for the day. Okay, so we are going to be doing, well, I wouldn't go that far too. C++ does have some good stuff. But anyways, we're going to be doing multi-threading, like I said, or not multi-threading. We're going to be doing multiplayer, another multi-thing. So what my plan is basically whenever we modify entities, we're going to have a way to like replicate that across all the clients. Not necessarily replicate that, but basically send that state downstream to them and say, hey, this happened. Make sure you update, blah, 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 right? And then we basically need a way to synchronize all our clients whenever the server sends them that data and say, hey, this stuff updated, please fix your stuff. And I want to make sure that we have a system where it's basically like we can group these sets of commands together, send one big batch at the end of each frame, and then the client receives one big batch, or we can send several small commands if we want to, if they're not necessary, and say, hey, if this packet gets dropped, it doesn't matter because next frame we're going to have something different anyways, and sort of send those like one-off packets and stuff. So that's the system I want to come up with. We'll see how it goes. let's review what we have so far and see what we're dealing with. So basically, if we go into application.cpp, which is where this all sort of starts, I think, might be in a different file. We'll check. So also no music again today because I still haven't finished setting up like the multiple audio streams and stuff too, audio channels on the stream. So yeah. C++ namespaces are what makes C++ better than C in your eyes, but since you don't have makefiles or any smart build system, you have to rebuild the entire thing every time. Yeah. Also templates. I really like templates, which are nice. I wish they were implemented a different way where it doesn't generate new code, but it's nice to have. Captain Metin, you want to add scripting to your game. You've searched, but people say use Groovy, JavaScript, or use class loader. At the moment, you allowed to use C# or C++ as scripting without JNA. Yeah, I see what's. I'm still looking forward to the Minecraft party too. And Captain Metin, are you basically, if you want to add scripting to your game, it's good to know what language your game is coded in and what scripting language you want to use. So, yeah. Am I allowed to use C# or C++ as scripting without Java? What's JNA? Wait a second. Access native, is this Java? Yeah, Java native access library. Okay. If you're using Java as your base game, I probably wouldn't use C# as the scripting language just because it's probably best just to keep it in Java. They're so similar. I wouldn't want to add all that overhead to like go across language barriers and stuff just for that. So if you were using C++ or something, I would say, yeah, you could use C#. It's still a pain because that type of stuff is hard. But anyways, multiplayer. So what we do is we say scene init right here. And what this does is it initializes some basic stuff for us, gets all that stuff initialized that lasts over the lifetime of the game and different scenes and everything. Then what we do is right here, when we're starting a local LAN game, we basically say initialize on localhost, port 8080. And this isn't going to work across like different computers too. I got to fix that, but for now it's fine. So anyways, what happens there is we say if the host name is something, then we say initialize the network. And this says this is not a server, so we're initializing a client. Let's pop this out. So we initialize a client. So then if we go into here, this says if we're a client, then initialize the client. Okay, so then this is where we sort of end up in. And what this does is it basically just initializes enet, all that stuff. Okay, so that's fine. What I want to get to is how we are handling the big, yes, this thing. So when we send chunk data, I just want to make sure that when we deserialize our entities, are we doing that good? Basically, what I have to make sure is that when we deserialize entities, their IDs aren't changing, which I think we should be fine with that, but just want to make sure. It's somewhere in here. At least I thought it was. Okay, wait, so this is chunk data. Do we have a separate event for... Okay, we do. Entity data. Cool. So then we say deserialize here. This reads the number of entities. Then we resize our entities for that. And then we get the ID right here. Okay, and then we set it directly. Cool. So basically this means that entity IDs remain the same across boundaries. One other thing we need to do too is we need to like send back a new entity, which is going to be like the player that just joined, right? Because if you just join a server, clearly there's not going to be an entity in the world that is you. So what we need to do is we basically need to say like when we do this in the client, if this is happening, basically what's happening is the client just joined and we need to add a new entity that is them and then send that back to them. So we basically need to say like, We need to do that before we get to here. Yeah, so let's go into the server and see what happens on the server side, because that's where we would need to create it. So if we go into server.cpp, which is over here, this is the first thing we're going to do, and then we'll figure out some other stuff from there. So basically, if we're on the server, so when a client connects, okay, this is what I was looking for. What we do is we say serialize the chunk data, which I need to abstract this into a function because this is horrible. We serialize all that, and then we say send a chunk data event. Then we say send Apache neighbors, send notify chunk worker. And then here we say serialize the registry, and then we send that, and then we free it. So what I basically want to do is say right here, we need to create a player. So we just basically need to say create entity. And this will return an entity ID. So this will be like the new player. Okay, and then we'll say ECS that. And it'd probably be good to have like a standard method for creating players. So let's go into our world very quickly, and we will add that here because I think that makes sense. So basically what we need is like some way to create players. For now, we'll just call it like ECS entity ID. Yep. Create player. And we'll want to use some identifier for the players pretty soon too. So I'm going to go ahead and just add a const star player name, and that will sort of be our way to identify players. And we should probably also identify them by an ID. Well, I guess the ID will be the entity ID, right? We don't have to duplicate that. Okay, so anyways, we give them a name and we create them. So let's go ahead and see what we need to do to create a player. If we go into world.cpp, I place that underneath is player underwater. So we'll place that right here. And then I already have something that creates a player. So basically what we need to do is just copy that code. Yep, it's this code. So we'll just copy this. And then we're going to remove this and like use the function instead. So let's go ahead and go back to create player. Create player. Paste all that. Okay, so when we create a player, we basically say, okay, let's create a new entity. We're going to assign, actually, that doesn't really matter. This is something else. Okay, so we create a player. We add a transform, character controller, box collider, rigid body, a tag, and an inventory. So far, these are all the components a player needs. We can add more components later if we need to. And then we say get the box collider, set the box collider's specification stuff. That's good. Transform. Set the player's transform stuff here. Okay, so this just basically gives it a default position. We might want to change this, like where we say at this position. So let's add a position modifier here. So we'll say const genome vec3ref position, so that we can actually like pass in and say I want this player to be created at this place, because I know that's going to come in handy at some point. Okay, so then we can go ahead and instead of doing this, we can say position.x, position.y, position.z. I mean, I guess we could probably do the box collider size stuff too, but that should be consistent across all players, so I'll just leave that hard-coded for now. Okay, then we get a character controller. This is all of like the run speed, the base speed, movement sensitivity, so that's mouse sensitivity, whether they're running, movement axis, view axis, which are different things, jump force, all that stuff. Okay, all these should be pretty standard too. I also have this camera offset thing, which I may change in the future, but for now it's fine. Okay, and then we get the inventory, and we just zero out the inventory. If we were like loading data, we could load that data in as well. So for now though, we just sort of zero that out. And also, thank you for following Vankercom. Cool, good to see you. Just check the chat real quick too. Okay, looks good. Looks like you guys are talking about some jar stuff. Okay, so yeah, we basically get the inventory, then we get the tag, and we set it to a type of player. This is going to be a problem though, so we're going to have to sort of change that a little bit. Basically, the problem here is clearly there's not the single player in the game anymore, right? We have local players, and then we have server players, I guess. I don't know. Other players, right? Supercomputer, thanks for following. Good to see you. And Vankercom, you love YouTube video explaining the OpenGL stuff. Thanks. Yeah. Those are a lot harder to make, but hopefully I'll start working on another one of those towards the end of this week, so that we can get that out pretty soon. Yep. Also, Gonk Allo 22. Thank you for following. Lots of new people today. But yeah, so basically the problem, right, is we have local players and we have server players. Episode 3 is going to be about shaders, yes. And we need to represent that here as well, because otherwise we can't find who the player that's playing on this client is. So that's sort of what we have to do here. So let's go into tag type and actually specify that. So we have client players and we have server players. And we're going to sort of abstract that. Also, if you guys have any cool shader stuff that you think would be a good challenge, let me know in the Discord, because I'm trying to start with challenges and then go from there. And so I think that's the best way to sort of guide the episode, is figure out what challenges I want to have, so that I can figure out what to lead up to. So yeah, if you have any ideas, send them to me and I'll think about using those as a specific challenge. Okay, so we're going to have client player and we're going to have server player. Maybe we should just call this local player, since that's kind of abstract. And then maybe this is like local player and then other player. I don't know. Non-local player. What's non-local? Is there a word for that? Let's see. Synonym for non-local. Foreigner. Okay, we could do foreign player. I don't like that though. Okay, we're just going to call it non-local player. Guess there's no good words for that. Okay, so we have local player, non-local player, outsider. Yeah, I guess we could do that, right? Outsider player. But that kind of, I don't know. We'll think about this. Maybe we'll change that in the future. For now, it kind of states what it's doing, right? So we're good there. Okay, so anyways, we got this, right? So this is going to break some code. So let's just make sure we have all that fixed up first. So right here, this is going to say this is a local player. Is that a good idea though? Oh wait, and this is another problem too. Uh-oh. So this introduces a new problem, right? Because from the server side, all players are non-local players. But from the client side, the specific player is a local player. So I'm trying to think, how do we represent that both ways? Yeah, so I'm going to have to think on this one for a minute. Supercomputer, some knowledge is there, by far not perfect, learning like everyone does. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do is we're also going to pass in world.h, bool is server or something. Yeah, I think that might be good. So then when we create them server side, they will all be non-local. And then when we go to recreate them client side, it should all be local, right? Jer Programmer is now following. Thanks for following. Good to see you. So let's go ahead and we'll add that for now. And then we can just say is server. We'll do non-local. Otherwise, we'll say tag type local. I don't know if I like this still though, because this just doesn't work very well. Yeah, I still don't like this. Okay, instead what we're going to do is we're just going to have a player tag. So all that was for nothing, because it doesn't make much sense to represent it differently on the server versus the client. And then what we'll do is we'll basically just keep track on each client of what this local player is by ID. And that's how we'll sort of figure out who we are. I think that's the best way to do this. Okay, so we're just going to keep this player, which should simplify things. So anyways, let's just make sure this works. Okay, let's go ahead, and when we're creating a player up here, what we can do is, this is only for new world stuff, so it's not quite representative of what's going to happen. But basically what we want to do is we want to say this is create player. We're going to give it a name, some name. Okay, Then this will give it a position, which we're going to say is that position right there, minus 145, 289, 55. Okay, so that's going to be our position. And then we can get rid of all of this stuff. It should be represented just in this thing. Okay, and then this is something different, so that's fine. Okay, we also need to get a hold of that transform after we do this. So what we can say is we can say this is the address of registry get component transform, and then we're going to give it the player. Okay, so that will give us the player transform. This is going to have to change a little bit too, just because of the way the server sort of has to handle multiple players. We'll think about that later though. For now, we're just going to assume there's like one player, and that's how it's going to work. So yeah, okay. So I think this should be good. If we create a new world, we should still work fine. Let's just make sure that works. And if we load a world, it should still load in fine as well. Why is it that whenever you go to code something, it's like, it always seems so easy in your head, and then you start getting into the details and you're like, yep, there's a lot of stuff I did not think about. Happens like every time, I feel like. And we got to wait for this to compile real quick. Oh, build errors. Okay. Oh, yeah, we should probably return something here. So let's go ahead and return that player. And we should be good. Okay, more build errors. So, oh, it's because I removed that, didn't I? Yes. Okay. Now we should be good. Just give up and go to bed like you do when it doesn't work. Honestly, I have done that sometimes, so I won't say it doesn't work. Sometimes going to bed is the best thing to do, and then you wake up and it makes more sense. Okay, so joining a world does work better. Also, I should mention, I fixed a few things too. So I fixed lighting, I think. So it should, like, when we block stuff up, actually get dark in here. And you'll notice it's kind of slowly getting darker. Cool. So yeah, it gets darker, and then if you break something, you get light. Lights seem to be working. So like if I go and, oh, whoops. If I go and like place a bunch of lights everywhere, seems to be working. If I break them, all works fine. So yeah, lighting finally sort of works the right way. I think it's bug free, but I've thought that several times before, and then something breaks. So I could be wrong, but yeah, that's good. Also, I have that little thing pop up. You'll notice it just said creative. And so now you can actually fly around and stuff, place things around, and collide with stuff, which is good in creative mode. And then I can switch one more time, and now I'm in spectator mode. Spectator mode, you can't place blocks, but you can fly through stuff. Yeah, if I hit F4 one more time, it switches me back to survival mode. So yeah, that was nice little feature. And then also, if I'm flying around, I can load chunks in and stuff, and it shouldn't break anything. I've done some testing, like I don't have any problems now, but I still haven't tested this too extensively. Also, if I fly out, I don't know if you guys remember from the last stream or not, but there was like a problem where blocks on the borders were getting some faces that weren't showing. You also notice that's kind of weird. I should probably look into that. The lighting isn't getting recalculated properly, but that should be an easy fix. But you'll notice the chunks all look okay, aside from the lighting when I'm loading in new stuff. There's no like missing faces or anything. It was a weird problem that I finally solved after a lot of trial and error. But yeah. What's the FPS I'm getting? 60 FPS? Yep. So you can see it in the top left there. Yeah. It occasionally drops down to 30. And I think that's because of something I have hard coded to force it to drop down like that. Whenever it starts getting a higher load and stuff. But I think I get 60 pretty consistently. It shouldn't be that bad. When you look at the CPU stuff too, like the tasks and everything, there isn't really anything that should be taking up that much time. So yeah. Is VSync enabled? It is. Yep. If you guys are seeing like a weird FPS issue and stuff, it's probably just because of the way it's streaming. I might have it on a different frame rate than what the game's running at. So I think I'm streaming at 30 FPS and this is at 60. So it'll be like skipping frames and stuff. Yep. But yeah, so Yeah, all that's working good. Anyways, what we were checking is if it works well if we do that, which it looks like it does. I think there's another bug too, though. Let's also check if we create a new world, and this might run into that bug. Nope. Okay, cool. So if we create a new world, that's weird. I still don't know why it's doing that quite yet, but it doesn't matter. Anyways, though, if we create a new world, it looks like it created the player entity fine. I am all good. If I go up into this guy, okay, yeah. So I just switched into this guy, and it looks like I just needed to switch into him for his gravity to start working for some reason. But yeah, that's fine. Anyways, that's all I wanted to check. Looks like we're good there. Columba, it looks like we're 1.5 meters, not 1.75 meters. I think we might be, yeah. In here? 1.8 meters is what it should be. So let me just double check that again. I think it should be 1.8. It looks correct when I was looking at it, but I could be wrong. So if I look at, yeah, I probably should have loaded the other world here. Okay, we might run into the bug now because there is a weird bug. And also those screenshots look horrible, but yeah. Okay, no, that's working good too. Cool, I fixed it. Okay, anyways, if I put myself up next to a block. Okay, so let's just do that. And then I'll switch into him. Yeah, it looks like we're 1.8. So that's 2 blocks. And then it looks like we just sort of, the lines are kind of thick, but it looks like we're ending like right about there. So that looks good. Okay, so this basically was just ensuring that our create player thing wasn't breaking stuff. So we can create players now, which is good. One other thing that would probably be nice is if a player has an actual name. So what I'm going to do so I don't corrupt the world that I have is we're going to add that in kind of incrementally. Let me just go delete that world that we created. So what topic am I working on? We are finishing multi-threading or multiplayer, hopefully. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. So I want to add the name to the player itself. So let's go to our player. Do we have a player component? I don't think I do. Yeah, so everything is kind of abstract in this character controller. And I guess we could add the name here too. I'm trying to think if that makes sense. Should a character controller have a name? Probably. Sure. Or do we just add a new component? I think I'm just going to add a new component. That's probably the easiest thing to do. So let's go ahead and create a new component, which is like player. So I think I have it in here. We'll go into player controller and then we'll add a component in here because I guess that makes the most sense. So struct player component. Maybe we'll just call it player, but for now I think this is fine. Okay, and then this will contain a stud string name. And actually, no, I don't think I'm going to do it this way. This is going to be a char star just so that we can serialize it because our components need to be trivially serializable. Okay. We just need to make sure that when we free stuff, we free all those names as well, which should be fine. Shouldn't have any problems with that. Oh, you meant that the eyes are on level 1.5 meters. Oh, okay, yeah. I should probably move the eyes up a little bit. And yeah, the vertical leap on the other entity is higher on purpose just to test that different player controllers can have different settings and stuff. But yeah. Okay, so right now, player component, I think, is just going to have a name. I can't think of anything else we need for multiple players other than a name. Doctor Who? I don't know. Okay, so we'll just leave it at this for now. Right, and so then let's go back into the world and add this component. So if we're loading in something, a world, I'm going to add it real quick. Just so that the player that we have already has it added, and then I'll free that memory and stuff too in a minute. Let's see, if we deserialize. Okay, so deserialize here, then we say player is that. Okay, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say registry, add component, player component, player ID. And then what we'll say is, oh crap, I can't do a char star there either, can I? That won't work well because then I'd be serializing a pointer and not an actual string. So instead, I'm going to have this be a char array, and we'll have a cap on how long a name can be. Probably the best way to do this. Okay, so what cap are we going to do? We're just going to do a 32 character limit. I think that's long. What's 32 characters? That's like... Yeah, that's plenty long. Okay. So 32 character limit on names. That way we actually serialize this data and we don't have to worry about allocating, deallocating anything special. Okay. So we'll do that. I guess it'd probably be good to have checks to make sure that when we add names and stuff. So I'll make sure that we can do that somehow. Oh, you guys are saying for the names. Okay, I think you are. I don't know. So let's go ahead. When we add that component, we can go ahead and say like get that component. So player component ref player comp equals registry get component. And we'll do that. Okay, so we'll do this and then we'll just say player comp dot name equals some name. Okay. And then we'll fix this so that it actually does this as well. But first, I just want to make sure this is working. Okay, what's this saying? Expression must be a modifiable L value. Okay. Is there any easy way? Do I have to like copy the memory and stuff? Because if so, that's kind of annoying. And I can't just assign a raw string literal. But that's fine. Okay, what we'll do is we'll just say like this has a void set name const char star name. And we'll have this be inline because it's not doing anything too crazy. Okay, so then what we'll say is like length equals stood string length name plus 1. And then we'll say assert that length is less than or equal to 32. Yep, and then we can say player component only accepts names up to 32 characters. And maybe instead of crashing here, we can just say log an error. And then we'll just truncate it. So we'll say if length is greater than 32, we'll just log an error. Okay, so we do that, and then we can like print out the name is too long. Okay, so we'll say all that. And then we'll just truncate it. So then we'll just say length equals 32. And that should be good. That way we just, whoops, didn't mean to do that. That way we don't actually crash and stuff, and it's kind of handles it gracefully, I guess. Okay, and then anyways, what we'll do is we'll say memory, or actually I guess stood string copy. Actually, that's probably not a good idea because I think string copy goes till this 0, and if we're truncating stuff, we don't want to do that. So we'll just say copy memory. We're going to put it in name. We're getting it from, oh, and this is going to be, there we go. So we'll change that. Okay, that's all good. We're taking it from in name, and then we're going to take length times size of char, which should just be 1. But good to have that there. Okay. And what's this saying? Okay, we'll just say void star here. Okay, so we copy that memory, and then what we're going to do, and actually I guess I should do length minus 1. Well, yeah, we'll do that, and then we'll just manually set that last character to \0. So we'll say name length minus 1 equals \0. Okay, and that should be good. I think that should set it. So this way we can do that. It checks if we're going to overrun the buffer or anything, and then truncates it if necessary. Cool. Snake case. Yes, that's because I wrote this in a C style. And these are like namespaces. This is like a function. That's why it's mixed. It's like namespace G, namespace memory, function copy mem. Okay. So that should be good. If we go back into world, we can go ahead and just say player component dot set name, some name, and I'll do like custom. That should be under 32 characters. If it's not, then I'll increase that limit because that seems too small. Let's also real quickly, just so that this is a little bit better, we'll say max name length equals 32. And this will be an integer. Okay. That way we're just a little bit better. I know some of you don't like screaming case, but I really don't care. So not that, like, if you don't prefer screaming case, that's fine. I'm just saying I don't care about using it. So yeah. Okay, anyways, so that should be good though. And I think we should be good here. Cool. So then inside a world, we can set it here. So now this means that when we deserialize it, we'll set it. So then when we save the world again, it should have that serialized automatically. And then I can just automatically deserialize this stuff and we shouldn't have to worry about this anymore. So first time we run this, if I go load the world, okay, we get an error. What did I do? Oh, okay. So this is a good error too. I added this just in case I forget to register components, and I did not register player component. So I have to find out where I'm registering stuff. This probably is going to pull up too many things. Is it? Maybe not. Okay, so we have this register inside of include.h. Okay, right here. Yeah, cool. So what we need to do is we need to register that new component. It's for debugging stuff, and it's also so that we have compatibility across DLLs and stuff, if I ever had that. Okay, so then what was that called? That was player component. And we'll call that player component. Okay, so I think that was in gameplay / player controller. And we're good there? We are good there. Okay, so we should be good. At least it was an easy error, right? Not anything complicated. Voxrips, you like single character concatenative namespace names with Pascal case name. I guess that is what I like, isn't it? It's kind of weird, but hey, it works. Okay, so we're loading stuff. Looks like we loaded everything fine. If we save stuff, it should save that name that we just set. So now if we go ahead and we look, when we deserialize, we can go back into our player controller. This is just a quick tip too. If you're ever adding something new and you don't want to break an old save, you basically modify the save routine first, add the stuff you want, and now when I unserialize it or whatever, it should have it automatically, right? So now when we go to create player, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add it here as well. So basically we're just going to have like a player component, ref player comp equals registry get component player component player. Okay, and then we're going to add that up here. So we're going to say registry add component player component player. Okay, so we do that, and then we're just going to set the name to whatever name they passed in there. Player comp dot set name player name. And I'm also going to have to make sure we free that memory, which we will do. I just got to make sure I set that up in a minute. Voxrips, is that what a versioning system does? I think it basically does that. It just adds actual functions around this. So it gets complicated. Like you probably have to, yeah, actually it probably shouldn't be too complicated. As long as you make sure that there's a way to go from like version A to version B. And then like say you come out with version C, then you can make a way to go from version B to version C. And if somebody's on version A, you can just go through the upgrades, right? You can just say, okay, upgrade 1, 2, 3, and go that way. At least that's probably how I would design it and probably how I will when I have to start worrying about that stuff. But yeah. Okay, anyway, so we've added that data. We should be deserializing it too now. So if we go back up to where I was, which was up here. Okay, so then we should be able to go here and then say like player comp equals registry get component player component player ID g logger info deserialized player And then we can do player comp dot name, and it's going to be that name, that custom name that we had. Even though somewhere down there we're setting it to just some name, right? So we can test this and stuff too. Jumpy Lion, thank you for following. Good to see you. Welcome to the Epic Minecraft Club. I should probably stop doing that because Soding Daily is much more experienced than I am and stuff. So, okay, if we load this, we should see that we loaded that player somewhere in our log. So if we go down here, deserialize 3 entities, some custom name. Okay, cool. So we got that custom name. And how's it going, Jumpy Line? Good to see you. We got that custom name, but if we go ahead and create a new world, we're going to get a different name. So if we do a new world actually here, we'll do that. And then I'm going to save it, and then I'm going to reload it because right now we're only printing that on save. So if we go ahead, drop down. Okay, and then we save. Okay, and then we go ahead and reload that. We should see a different name. Did it work? Hopefully it did. Okay, yeah, and then we see deserialized player some name. Okay, cool. So we've successfully upgraded our old world, and we now have a way to add player names and stuff whenever we load a player. Yeah, that was probably unnecessary, but I wanted to save the old world because I don't want to lose it. And it's good to know how to do that type of stuff. Yeah. Voxerus, about the music thing, indie game music is mostly royalty free. I'll have to take a look at indie game music, yeah, because I just didn't want to keep using Nintendo music because Nintendo is pretty picky about that type of stuff. And as he was, it's easy to see why big gaming companies have specialized people doing different tasks. There's a lot you need to know. Yeah, it's definitely, it can get overwhelming, but as long as you just work on one task at a time, you're good. Just focus one thing and then get that done, and you don't have to worry about anything. Okay, so we have a way to create players now. So what we need to do when we load on our server is we basically need to create a new player. Yep, so we got this way. We can create a player. We can give it a name. So when we create a player on our server right here, okay, yeah, what we need to do is instead of saying this, we need to say world create player. And we can basically say, I want a player, new server player. Okay. We're going to give it a position. That position is going to be probably, we should probably use like the actual player's position just so that we can make sure that's working. Do I have the player somewhere in here? I guess I'll just use like some random player too. We'll figure out positions and stuff because that's going to be kind of complicated in the future. But yeah, supercomputer. Specialized guys can sometimes easily get multiple times more performance out of some part of the code because they know exactly what will cost how much time and optimize for it. That's true. It's also good though to have some people who know the big picture because sometimes even if you optimize a certain portion of the code, you may not get the overall performance gains that you could if you refactored like the whole structure of the code. So it's good to have both, I think. Okay, let's get the player though. So we'll say, let's actually just get transform. Actually, I don't think I can do that. Can I? Get player. No, okay. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna say ECS entity ID, current player equals scene. Or actually, I guess registry, find tag type player. Okay, I'll have to add that tag type. Let's go up here. Do hash include core slash ECS? No, I can't remember where I have this. Let's find that tag type. Okay, it's in components.h. And where was I? I think I was in here. No, I was in here. Don't want to pin that. Okay, so we'll include components, hash include core slash components. Okay, cool. So we should have that tag type. Cool. So, okay, yeah. So we find a player, and then what we're going to do is we're going to say transform ref current player transform equals registry get component transform current player. Yeah. Okay, cool. So then we can do that, and we can finally say current player transform dot position. Cool. So that should be good. We basically create a player whenever they join. We add we use whatever player we find, we use their position for this new player. And now it should be sent to the player when we go. And we also need to send this to basically any other clients that exist, right? Because if a new player joins, we need to sort of notify all the different things. So this will basically become a command, I guess, in our system. But for now, I'm not going to worry about that because I don't want to have to worry about that. Okay. Let me check out the chat real quick. It is satisfying when something just works first try. Okay, so I think this should be good for now. We basically create a new player. We're going to send it to whoever just joined. That's not going to be replicated. Well, it is going to be replicated on the server. And if we're acting as a server, this will all sort of just show up automatically. So now let's start working on the next part, which is going to be commands. But for now, first, I want to make sure that we can get this to work right. Okay, so let's go back to client side. So when we deserialize this, we need a way to figure out what player was just created, right? So I'm guessing we should probably send this new player first or after. I'm thinking. We should probably send it afterwards. So what we'll do is we'll send 2 packets, I guess. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to send 2 packets. We're going to say network send client event.peer, which is going to send it to this client that just connected. Network event type local player, I guess is what we'll call it. And then we're going to send it the address of our new player, size of entity ID. Okay, I like this. And these should be sent in order because of the way I have this all set up. So yeah, so let's go to network event type. We're going to add in a local player thing here. So we'll say local player. Okay, and so basically now we can send that as an event. Right after the entity data gets sent, we should receive a packet that says who I am. I'm wondering if there would be any problems where like this happens in 2 separate frames, which could be problematic, but for now we'll ignore that and we'll just say that this is going to work. We can add some code and stuff to handle that in the future. But anyways, we've got this thing, and then we're going to say case network event type local player. And then what we're going to do is we're going to set the local player somehow. I'm trying to think of what the best way to do this will be. Oh, actually, this should be pretty easy. We can just say world set local player to whoever this is, which is going to be inside this raw memory. Actually, I don't even need to do that because the data that we have here should be just that thing. Yeah. Okay. So actually what we can do is we can say ECS entity ID local player equals ECS entity ID star data. And then we'll just dereference that. Okay, I think that should be all we need to do. And then we can say set it to that local player. And then what we can do is we can go into world.h because this is sort of who keeps track of that stuff. We can say void set local player ECS entity ID local player. And the reason I'm not passing this by reference is because this is the same size as a pointer, so it doesn't matter. Okay, anyways, let's do that. And if we go into world.cpp, we can go here, and then we can say, I think I have something called player ID, which, yes. Okay, so then we can just set this manually. Okay, that should be all we need to do. 90% sure. What I also should do now is inside of Playercontroller.cpp, I'm going to have to modify this just a little bit so that, yes, okay. So basically this like has its own version of player, and what I'm doing is I'm just finding the first element with player as its tag type. We shouldn't do that. Instead, what we should do now is, yeah, see, we just find it here. We should ask the world for the local player. So we'll just say, instead of this, we'll say world get local player. Okay. I hate getters and setters, but this is where it actually makes sense to me. And this will be ECS entity ID, get local player. Okay, and we'll go into here, return player ID. Okay. So that should be good. And then I guess if player ID in the world gets initialized to the null entity, so we should all be good here. It'll still be a null entity if that's not working for whatever reason. Okay, I think I'm happy with this. So now when a client connects, they get the local player as a message. Then they set it in the world to that entity ID. And this should happen after we deserialize the entity. So we know it exists at this point. When the server gets a new client, they create a new player on the server. We'll eventually send this out. So I guess I should say like to do send new player event to all clients. That way all clients are notified that a new player is joined and they can add it to their list of entities as well. And then we can sort of continue on our merry way. Okay. I think this is good. I think this should work. And now we should get a new player when we join. So let's go ahead and do the scary part, which is actually testing it. I think I go up to here. So we're going to launch 2 instances now. We'll do multiple startup projects. Apply. Okay, let's see what happens. It is the scary part indeed. And actually, I'm not even going to be able to do anything because I have the buttons disabled right now. So I'll fix that in a minute too. I'm not sure why it's recompiling stuff though. I can't remember if I changed an important header file. Okay. Yeah, so we're going to have to redo some stuff because this is disabled right now for a reason. So let's go real quickly. I think that was Lan Server because I can't remember where I put this stuff. Okay. Cool. So get rid of that. That's fine. Do I have it in 2 places? Yes, I do. Cool. Get rid of that. And we should be good. Cool. Wait. Is that? Yeah, okay. This was start. This was join. Okay, we should be good now. Cool. Okay, now we can test this out. Compiling some new code first time. No errors, no warnings. Something must have gone horribly wrong. Well, I'm pretty confident that this will probably work. Maybe. I don't know. I can't actually say I'm pretty confident because I'm not. But I have hopes that it'll work. So... play game. I have this in the wrong place. Okay, cool. So we're here. Okay, I'm going to move over to here. Start Lan Server. We've started a server. Join. Okay, no, it did go horribly wrong. So if it works, you're the real deal. If not, uh-oh. Okay, let's see what happened. What did we get? No errors. We failed to update. It failed here. Async init thread. Oh, actually, I think this should be fine, hopefully. I just don't, I think this thread just doesn't exist. Fingers crossed, that's all it is. So basically I have that thread that I launch, which allows me to show the loading screen when you're loading a new world. And I just never updated that for networking, which is why I had the buttons disabled. Okay, so yeah, when we go into here, like you'll notice I go into here. And then in this else clause, I have at the bottom of it, async init thread equals, and then I set it up. So basically I just need to do the same thing here. Oh, but this is the hard part. Yeah. So I need to set up this thread, but I need to start it from the networking side, I guess, technically. That cannot be it. That's totally 100% it. I'm trying to think of how I want to do this because I need to pass in the player position here because this basically just starts loading chunks. Actually, I guess it doesn't matter. I can pass into anything here because we don't care. Because what's going to happen is if I go into here, this says check chunk radius. If we go into here and we're joining from a client, well, all it's going to do is it's just going to do this and then it's going to leave. So yeah, that should be fine. Okay. So let's see if this works. It's not going to show a loading screen though, which isn't good. So I will have to fix that eventually, but yeah, that's fine. And I guess it makes sense that it wouldn't show a loading screen. It should show like a connecting screen or something. So that's fine anyways. Okay, so we've started a server. I'm going to move over to here. So we should join in this position. Okay. Let's see. It looks like I joined in the right position, maybe. Whoa, everything is dark. What's happening? Okay. I think I joined in the right position. Yeah, that looks like the house. It's just dark. Okay, so everything is dark. Can I set the time? No, I can't. Oh, and you know why it's dark? It's because I'm not calculating lighting. Okay, this is good though. I mean, all the errors up here isn't good. Cannot check if invalid entity -1 has component. Oh, I think what's happening here is it's just yeah, okay, this is like the client still hasn't deserialized everything. It's trying to like update players and it's like there's no player. Then we get to here and we like actually deserialize stuff and it's like, "Oh, you're good." So that's what's happening there. We can fix that too. This is now a horror game, I guess. This is the dark realm, right? Any new players, they are not allowed to join the normal realm, I guess. Oh, whoa. And this is weird. My mouse is like stuck almost. Now I think this is because, and I can't move. So our player ID is now confused about who the real player is, I think. That's what's going on. So yeah, but because you can see it's like moving super slow for some reason. Blissmiss, thank you for following. The good news though is, so even though this one's weird, if I move over here, I'm not moving the player on this side, which is good because I think that means that they are actually separated, but actually that probably doesn't matter because this would happen before anyways. So yeah, it doesn't matter too much. Let me just make sure we close that. When you save and exit from this side too, it doesn't actually do anything because yeah, we can't serialize over the network yet, but it's fine. Anyways, if I go ahead, this is still bad. Save and exit here. We will try this again in a minute. Okay. Now I got to think of what we're going to be doing. Random generate a player ID and name on startup for testing. Probably a good idea. Right now, since the world is saved, I do have a custom name for that player, right? It's called some custom name for our player, and then the new player should have a different name. So, yeah. But we can modify that one more time just to make it a little bit better. Oh, crap. And this is not good, maybe. There's going to be extra players now. Yeah, this isn't very good. Okay, so what I mean by that is basically what happened is we created a new player on the server, and then we saved it when we saved all of our components. So now that new player is sort of stuck in that world. So if I join again, let's switch this back to regular. I guess it doesn't matter too much. Okay, so if I join again, if I join that world, single player mode, it's going to be confused about which player I am, I think. Yeah, so it's still super slow because it can't tell what player I am. So we need to fix that real quickly. Let's see what happens when we deserialize. Okay, so when we deserialize, we say deserialize the registry, which gets us all of our entity stuff. And then if we go up to this if statement, okay, so we deserialize. Okay, yeah, and then what's happening here is we're just finding the first entity with the player type component, which isn't good, but it's not bad right now. We'll fix this, basically save local player too in our world file. And I think that should be good. So basically each client will have their own local player, and that way they can tell who they are. I think that's probably the best way to do it. We'll have to come up with a better system eventually, but for now, I'm okay with this. I'm trying to think of what else we need to do though. So we get this. I think we're probably broken in the player controller. Because on the world, when we do this, we set the player ID to this. That's fine. Player controller says if the player ID is null, player ID equals world get local player, which should return this. And if we look at the player controller, when we initialize, we set the player ID to the null entity. So we should hit this, and then we should say player ID equals this. And then let's also just log it just in case. So we'll say g logger info player controller found player %s, and then we'll print the player name, which we can get by saying player component player comp equals registry dot get component. Whoops. Okay, so we'll get the player component player ID. Okay, and then we will just print out player comp dot name. Okay, so what we should see is we should see this finds player custom, some custom name or something. Let's see if that works. Close one of those out. Okay. Yep, that was that one. Cool. So let's play join. And then we should see that once this finishes loading. Cool. Yeah. So that's working. Player controller found player some custom name. So that's good. Why is this not working now though? Oh, I think it's because the camera's trying to lock to two different things. Okay, so let's do one more thing. So if we go into our character controller, yeah, multi-threading or multiplayer, I keep mixing these up, makes things so much more complicated because now you have to worry about synchronization. I guess it's the same problem as multi-threading, right? You have to worry about synchronization there too, and it's just an annoying problem. How many computers did I get for Christmas? I got 0. I've got 1 computer, and that's basically all I need right here. So good enough for what I need right now. Okay, so this goes through and views everything with a transform, character controller, and a rigid body. And then we have this thing somewhere down here, which is like if the controller is locked to camera. Okay, and then we basically find the camera, and we set the camera's position to whatever this is. And so what's happening is I think this is going to have this controller. Yeah, we have 2 players in the world, and both of them have locked to camera as true. And so what's happening is the camera's trying to lock to both player entities. So what we should do is we should say lock to camera equals true here. And then we should go through and we should find any other entities. So we'll say for auto entity in registry.view player, or I guess just like character controller or whatever. And then we can say if character controller ref other controller equals registry.getComponent, character controller. And then we can say if other controller does not equal this controller. And we're going to check the addresses because we want to check and see if the pointers are equal or not. So we can do that. What's wrong with this? Oh, and I need to pass in the entity ID. So entity. Okay, so if that does not equal that, we'll say other controller dot locked camera equals false. Okay, so now we should just lock onto our player. Hopefully, that's the plan. We'll see. So that should fix that weird thing that's happening there. Okay, so we close that, and then if we join here, we should be able to move our mouse and stuff again. Okay, we are. Looks like we're the other player, though. Maybe? I don't know. Because it looks like I was falling for some reason. You'll notice the log says over there, found player some custom name, so that's kind of weird. It's going to take me forever to fly up there, so I'll just save and exit, I guess. Okay, so we're going to have to fix that, too. It looks like this world is going to be corrupted. Can't use that anymore. Okay. I will be right back, guys. I'm going to think for like 5 minutes just about how I want to structure all this. So we shall see. And how do I get those smooth text animations? To be discussed in like 5 minutes. So I'll be right back, guys. And then we can continue on with this and hopefully finish this up. Okay, guys, how's it going? Back. I got some water and stuff too. I think I have an idea of what I want to do now to fix this, and it should be pretty easy. I think we're basically good now. And how's it going, Joe Omega? Good to see you. So somebody asked too just a second ago, Miri4F, you asked about the text animations. I basically have something inside the main HUD which allows you to notify something. So basically we just have like the current notification or whatever. And I just use like a simple linear function. So basically like if you want to notify of something, it just pops up some text right above the inventory hotbar. And we basically just say, update the notification message. So if we still are displaying it, then I basically look for how long we want to display it for. If it's greater than the fade out time or whatever, we basically just fade it out according to a linear method. So it basically just slowly decreases the alpha and then it fades out and then we just stop displaying it. So, yep. Just a simple kind of alpha decreasing it over time. Yep. And you're working on a command line parser, but just a few small things to do before creating a window. Cool. That is always fun. Okay, so yeah, no problem. Miri4F. So I think what I want to do is go into into our network or our server. Okay, yeah. So we're here. When we do this, when a client connects, we're basically creating a new entity, which we do here. Not here. We do that somewhere. Okay, right here. We do that here. New player. So we create a new entity. What we want to do also is we want to say new player lock to camera is false, right? So what we want to say is like if new player, or wait, let's do new player or registry dot or get component. We have to do arrow character controller, which we should have because we just created it through that whole method and everything, dot locked to camera equals false. Okay, so we just want to make sure that we don't lock it to the camera when we create a new entity. Let's go ahead and say include, I think it's like core / components, maybe. I might be wrong on that. Let's see. Nope, looks like that worked. No, that did not work. Where do I have this defined? Character controller.h, that makes sense. Okay, so let's hash include gameplay character controller. Okay, so we've basically got a way to set that lock to camera thing to false. What's this saying? Oh, and then I have to pass in the ID. Okay, so that way we don't create a new entity that gets like, and then have that weird locking issue. So I think that should be good. Voxriffs, what do I think about replacing arrow with dot? I don't know. I don't think I see too much of a problem with that, but I don't know. I kind of like the arrow notation because it just does make it explicit that this is like a pointer as opposed to just not a pointer. But I guess it doesn't matter too much because when you're using references, we just use the dot notation. And you're kind of aware that it's just a reference. So, yeah. I don't think it matters too much. Okay, so when we create that new player, we lock it to the camera. Or we don't lock it to the camera. So that should be good. And then we send the client 2 messages. We send it all of our entities. And then we send it the new local player, which is what its player should be. So then when the entity initializes, or I guess, yeah, when the new player initializes their whole thing, they basically get this message where they deserialize everything. And then we say world set local player to this, which sets the local player. And then we should probably also reset it in the player controller. So I'm going to add like one method in here that just says void set player if needed. And then I'm just going to move this functionality into there. So we're just going to add that right here. And then we're just going to drop all this code right into there. So That's all in there. Okay, and then what do we need to pass in? Oh, we need to pass in a registry. Do we really though? We don't really need to, because I can just do this. Registry. I should be able to do this. Maybe it's in scene. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so I can just do that, and then we can just change all of this to that. Okay, so let's just change all of these up real quickly. Change these up. Okay, almost there. Okay, so we should be good there. Cool. So basically we have this function now, and then we can just call this right here instead of doing all this, which I removed it, I guess, already. So we'll just do that. And then what we can do is inside of our client, once we set our local player, we can say player controller set player if needed, which I called this. Okay. So we'll do that. And then we will go ahead and just say include gameplay / player controller. Okay. I might want to actually add a parameter there too, just so that it forcefully sets it here. So basically we'll just add a bool force override or something like that equals false. And then we can add that down here. Okay. So then we can say if the player is null or it doesn't have player or we're forcing it. And then inside of our client, we can say true. Okay, so I think that should be good. Just checking the chat real quick. Okay, so it looks like you guys are talking about operators and stuff. Okay, so I think this should be good. So basically we just set the local player, and then we also set the player controller's player so that it resets to whatever player just joined, and then it resets all of the other players to not lock to the camera. So now if we join, we should be good, I think. We're also going to need a way to like save or figure out which player you are and stuff when you join. And I think that's what we're going to use that name for inside the player component. Basically, when you join, you're going to have your name stored in some global state in your game, right? Your username or whatever. And we'll kind of go from there. Okay, so let's add a test world. Okay, it looks like it's this one. Cool, so we're falling. Okay, and we're here. Let's add some oak somewhere so we know that we are doing the right thing. Okay, so I'll stand right here. If I say start Lan Server, join over here. Oh, I still have to fix that. Okay, it looks like that did go through successfully. I am over here. I also need to send the time. I can move freely, and what about this guy? Okay, I can move freely too. So next step we need to do is like send movement updates across the network, and this is where the actual sending and receiving stuff is going to happen. But basically what should happen now is, first of all, yeah, so this one was called new server player, whereas this guy was called some name. Okay, so basically we can see here that this is a different entity than this one, right? This entity's name is some name. This entity's name is new server player, which is good. That's what we wanted. So let's go ahead and save and exit over here, which is going to do nothing but disconnect us. And then we're going to close that out. If I save and exit here, I should pop up back here just because of the way we're loading stuff, because this will be like the first entity with the tag type of player. So we should be good there. So then if I go ahead and restart everything, close one of those out. And then if I play join, I should join from that same position. And I am indeed joining from over here. Cool. Okay. And it also says we are player some name. Okay. So that's kind of working good. Let's move on to like actually sending messages across the network. so that we can easily like sort of do what I talked about at the beginning of this, which was sending those position updates and everything, and receiving them on all the clients and everything. Okay, so this is going to be another big chunk of code. Let's first of all commit this so that I have some sort of save point, I guess you could say. So we'll say add commit get new entity created when player joins server. And then we'll push that. Now, the other problem we have is basically we don't really want to simulate the other players unless they're actually joined. So I'm going to have to come up with a way to like not serialize certain entities. Because right now it just serializes all of them. And so that player will be like saved and loaded, but we don't really want them to be on the game unless they're on the game. So it's another thing that I'm going to have to think about soon. For now, though, if we can get this like sort of messaging system working, I think that's going to be good. So I'm trying to think of the best way that we can do this. I think the best way we can do this is we can have something in here. So we have this network. We can send network event type and just like some random data and size and bytes, which is all good. And then we can broadcast messages too. So what we'll do instead is we'll have like or I guess what we'll do in addition to this is down here, we will have like a template type name T void send message. And this will send a tref message, right? And this is going to have an event type too. I'm trying to think of what the best way to do this is going to be. Because basically what I want to do is I want to basically add in a way to send multiple messages, batch them together if needed, and then send them all at once at the end of the frame. So this will basically be more like queuing a message. And then that message will be sent at the end of the frame. And I'm trying to think of what the best way to do this will be. Yeah, we could do something like this, and then we'll have like a message type. Okay, so we're gonna have sort of two different things. This is like network event type, and then this will also have like a message event. I don't know if I like this though, because it's kind of like then all of these should just be messages. Nah, okay, I think I'm gonna keep it this way. This is kind of a separate thing. Okay, yeah, we're gonna keep it this way. So then we're gonna have an enum up here, which is like a message type, which is gonna derive from uint8. And then we can add different message types in here. I'm still trying to think if I like this. I don't know. Let's think about what we need to do first. I guess is probably the best way to do this. So what we need to do is we basically need to send position updates and stuff as messages instead of sending like just setting stuff. So basically like in character system.cpp, I have stuff in here where I basically say controller.apply, blah, 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 do all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. And I just update it. Instead of doing this, what I need to do is I basically need to say like rb.velocity.setX, right? .setX. And then we set it to something. But I'm not sure if I like that, or if what we should do is we should just like say something at the end of this. Okay, so we've modified transform character controller rigid body. And then basically what we can say is we can just say, oh, we updated that stuff. And then we can just say like send message, update character controller or whatever. This is tough because I don't know what I want to do, because basically my concern is, right, if we have these velocities, and we're saying like set x to some x, and that creates a message. What happens if we do this and then we say velocity.set x again to new x? Then we're sending two messages across the network when really we just need to send one thing. SC Woods, when all of multiplayer is done, just copy it all and send it to you. Yeah, I wish it worked like that, right? This is a trickier problem than I thought it would be. I'm probably gonna have to think about this a little bit more off stream, and then hopefully by the time I come back to this, we can see what I did and it'll all just work. So I might end the stream here in a couple minutes. Yeah. If you guys have any questions about anything or you want to see certain things though, now is the time to ask. So we'll do that real quickly. Makina Hamana, sending automatically whenever you set the value seems like a bad idea. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too, because we only want to send like the deltas, which is basically the stuff that's changed. And so I should come up with a system that basically just merges messages together and stuff too, which is probably better. What is register? Are you talking about like when I did register? I think I did it somewhere like world or scene. Because it's not like the register that you think of when you're thinking of like memory. This thing register component, or are you thinking of something different? Because that could be something different. If I load this up though, everything is working pretty good. I mean, it's getting pretty close to like workable. It's multiplayer is like the last big step, and I guess sound too, but that can be another day. That should be give oak log. Yep. But all in all, like we've got pretty much most of the stuff you would want. You can craft stuff and everything. You know, that's all working. Right? We can do sort of that type of stuff. Did I add this? I don't think I did. Maybe I did. I don't know. But yeah, most of the stuff is working pretty good. AK dev, yeah, are you talking about function or variable registry? Yeah, that might be true too. Makina Hamana, did I make the voxel engine too, like the renderer? Yes. So everything in here is like sort of custom built. The only things I didn't make, I don't know. I made pretty much everything in here. So like the entity component system I made, physics is something I made, the voxel renderer and stuff is custom built. So yeah. Yeah, pretty much everything. So register arrow this. Yeah, I think you're talking about this AK dev. Registry arrow this. Yeah, because registry is basically just like a container for the NC component system. Yeah. So it's basically just like a way for me to get components and stuff. So you can see I'm registering components here, and then like here, I basically say get the transform for this entity. So this is basically just the container that holds all the entities and all of their data and stuff. And then I can just sort of get that. Yeah. And is the ECS like Unity has it? I think it's probably similar, because like Unity sort of changed their method to like ECS and everything. The way I use it is different though, because I sort of operate on batches of entity components and stuff instead of doing like the way Unity makes you think about it, which is where you have a script that you attach and that script runs once per component. So yeah, a little bit different. With Unity, it depends on what you're talking about. Unity's components aren't in ECS. Dots is in ECS. Yeah, that's okay. So Unity's components aren't ECS, but Dots is. So I guess they have like two separate systems, which is kind of annoying, I feel like, because that makes it harder. But yeah, I think that's going to be it for this stream, though, guys. I might be streaming again later this week because I do have off for the rest of this week as well. So keep an eye out, and hopefully I'll see you guys sooner with working multiplayer. But thank you all for watching. It was good to see everyone, and I'll see you guys next time. Okay, time to end the stream. See you guys.